Today I come to you as the diluter in chief. Diluter, one who dilutes. Thank you. And I'm ready to make a case for original sin. I will base my case in Michelle Alexander's theology and that of St. Paul. St. Paul argues, as Michael read, that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. No one can come and become new until they realize they've fallen short and sinned, short and distant from the glory of God. Michelle Alexander, the brilliant author of The New Jim Crow, argues that we Americans need to get in touch with our inner criminality. She borrows heavily from James Baldwin, who tells us that he has only one accusation for his country, and that is that we get rid of our innocence. So, Baldwin and Alexander and St. Paul agree that something is going on with us. In our refusal to be wrong about anything, we turn into people who are wrong. We end up drinking coffee in styrofoam cups at motels while everything is blooming. Outside, we're in the wrong place at the wrong time over and over and over again. We let white students do crack at frat parties and imprison black people for drugs. Neither goes all the way back to original sin, but both head right there. As diluter in chief, as someone who respects Orthodox Christianity and knows most people don't and can't, I want to tell you how my syncretism works and how it works all the way back to St. Paul. And I'm going to use baptism as my example. The knot of our baptism is that we are saints and sinners, created to head straight for glory, but all fallen. I was baptized on the 7th day of my life. I found out later why. My tribe actually believed that if I died before I got baptized, I'd go straight to hell. So they were in a hurry to get me sprinkled. Now, I find that a little extreme. I've lost respect for that version of hell, the kind that condemns unbaptized children to eternal suffering. But simultaneously, I've gained a lot of respect for hell and for what baptism prevents. So let's start with baptism, that subject about which Christians love to fuss. It is our favorite fuss. It's the thing we want to be right about the most, and that, of course, begins the problem of original sin. I'm interested in what baptism might really mean. I'm interested in the more interesting dilutions, the ones that mix us up and spit us out into that great, unnavigable sea of life. So baptism means that even innocent children can and will be sinners. Baptism announces where that beautiful baby we just blessed is going. That beautiful baby in all that white and all that frill is going to fall short of the glory of God, like I do and like you do. She is going to join the human race and become part of the great unwashed. The water of baptism is a sign of the glory of God and how we are to return again and again to glory. A sacrament is an outward sign of an inner grace. In baptism, we wash the child before she has a chance to do a really good sin. Or if you're another kind of baptizer, we ask the child to embrace the grace of God before he or she comes of age. Or if you're Jewish, like Eleanor Harrison, a former community minister here who put out the most amazing post yesterday, we were all invited to the baby naming at Romemu at 11 and could join the baptism at Grace Lutheran at 2 o'clock. Now, I think that's wonderful for all kinds of reasons most of you know, but as I see it, the baby had 14 days to get out of hell. Double blessed. And some of you know that I have 3 children who were named and baptized, and 3 grandchildren who were not baptized. And yes, yesterday we had a unique Seder, and I'll say more about that soon. So in my denomination today, the UCC has a great debate going on about baptism. We're back into it. Every 4 years or so, we have a flame up about the subject of baptism. We have the low bar baptism people like me, where if somebody calls up and asks to have the baby done, the baby gets done. People of the low bar point of view dilute baptism in order to make it accessible for people like me who are multiple and multiplying in our sense of the divine. We also have the high baptism bar people in the UCC, where the parents have to join the church, pay the dues, and not just promise to attend Sunday school, but sign on the dotted line that the kid will be at Sunday school. These are the baptismal concentrators and intensifiers, and they have a good argument. In some, they argue that Christianity is too big to get in 10 minutes or through a little bit of water. They say that Christianity is a big thing and has a lifetime involved in it. I agree with them here. As Lauren Mead, the founder of the Alban Institute, put it so very well in his great Southern drawl, which I will not mimic, you cannot take a $20 plant and put it in a $1 hole because the thing won't grow. So the concentrators have a really good argument. Gardeners know this is true. But it's just not true or accessible for enough people today. They don't have time to join a church, probably won't live in the same community for more than 2.3 years, and know that the F and Q train rarely work officially on the weekends. So at my congregation in Miami, we had intense struggles on this matter, mostly because the gay-friendly Cubans in Miami, all 600 of them, had left the well-dug hole, and I do mean hole, of the Roman Catholic Church, and wanted to raise their children in the UCC because we were gay-friendly, or some of the greatly diluted clones like the UCC. They'd come in droves, asking us if we could do the baby on Sunday. Why? Because Abuela was in town. And they wanted to look like they'd been going to church, and they wanted us to do it that Sunday, because otherwise, airfares and everything like that. So we developed a well-diluted compromise. We charged the families $80 for the baptism. That meant it was about as good as childcare or soccer. They had to attend 2 sessions with one of the ministers and become a group and tell their personal story and talk about their hopes for their children and hear what we thought baptism meant. They all came because it was required. They made friends with each other. And then they came back. And they got out of their spiritually stuck place and put their children in the Sunday school. The water of the baptism was relatively inconsequential compared to what happened to the families and the friends and the children as they grew up together. We would start the baptisms at 1 o'clock in the 4 corners of the building and go until about 3, doing between 12 and 16 babies per Sunday. call us the diluters in chief. But we made a little opening in a closed door. We dug a little bit bigger hole for people in which to grow. And we did it for the glory of being planted in a beautifully fertilized, big, deep hole where you can flourish as a human being. But while we were doing it for the glory, we weren't ignoring the sin either. I heard Reverend Barber of Moral Mondays fame speak again this week, and he said a couple of morally intense things. One was, he said he didn't want a leader who didn't know he was a sinner. He didn't want a leader who walked and said, "It's me, I can fix everything. I'm here to save you." He said, "Keep me away from that kind of leader. I want nothing to do with them. I want a leader who knows she's a sinner." The other thing he said was a very savvy point about Donald Trump. Trump said he ain't the problem. He's just the face of the actual policies of the Republican Party. He said, well-baptized people don't know a sinner when they see him. Well-baptized people know how to think and see what's really going on, including what is really going on inside of themselves and of other people. As diluter in chief, I'd like to head for the meaning and not the mechanics of baptism. Quickie baptisms, like we did in Florida, are just the face of the meaning of baptism. Its meaning is that we will all sin and all fall short of the glory of God. Its meaning is that even if we become the President of the United States, we will still be shackled in what we are able to do. Reverend Barber said he wanted a leader who knew how to say, "I don't know what to do next, but let's get together on Tuesday night, talk about it." I've often joked that my diluted theology comes from my being a born-again pagan, and I'm not kidding. I follow a convicted felon and join the people who baptize in his name. Reverend Barber also, in the same speech, made the strongest case I've heard yet for transgendered rights. Whenever they want to confuse you, he said, they stir up racial and sexual fears as if religion was about that, or as if religion was about the bathroom. Isn't it odd that people in North Carolina think sin is about what goes on in bathrooms, when it's clearly the U.S. Congress that's the problem? When it's clearly about dehumanizing the people you like to call sinners, because you imagine you're the Christian. I may be sinning right now, even in my protest against certain other people, and I may not know how to help it. Michelle Alexander also notes the sins that abound in we diluters and born-again pagans, which is most of us here in this room. She says in a way that chills me to my core that the most violence happens in the most diverse societies. Oh my God, that's us. That's what we're trying to be. And we are so not beyond our own tribalism. So in the few minutes we have left, can we talk about sin? Sin is falling short of the glory of God. And some people yell the first part, sin is falling short, and other people whisper the glory of God. I think we've got to do both in an even-handed tone. Sin is falling short of the glory of God. Both and. So yesterday we had Passover at our house and told the story of the baby Moses being put in the water by a slave, being pulled out of the water, by Pharaoh's daughter. The slave woman actually gives up the baby to the water. In baptism, we give our children up to the water, the great water of life. We let them go. We let them go to God. We let them go to Pharaoh's daughter and Pharaoh's iPads, which could also be Miriam. Isn't it interesting that Moses, the great leader of the Hebrew people, was a child born of both privilege and slavery? Even if we're born in utter poverty, are we still not a child of the glory of God? A privilege if there ever was one? And doesn't somebody unlikely pick us up out of the water at some time? Sure did for me. Isn't it interesting that the baby's put in the water by an innocent slave and pulled out by an unguilty member of Pharaoh's army, you know, the one that God drowned on their way out? We gave our 2 grandchildren a prize for finding the afikoman. If you've been to a Seder, you know you hide it. It's matzah, and you hide it so you can find it kind of quickly, and then the children find it. And some really great things happened. The kids found it. It's always good. And then they shared the $3 each that Warren gave them. They thought they would put it together into one pile. And then showing their glory, they pulled it. Showing their perfidy, they whispered to me, "We're saving up money for our own iPad." And quoting Caleb, "Every Jewish kid I know has an iPad but me." Should they have their own iPad? Should they ever use the word should? Should they always use the word may? Should they always pool their resources? As a born-again pagan and a slightly repentant sinner, I have put myself on a diet. 7 shoulds a day, that's it. 7's you must. You must not let your children use iPads. You must baptize the baby like this. You must share your money. I get 7 a day, and then I have to go look St. Paul straight in the face and say, how much of the glory of God did I miss again today? But listen, if you really want to be chilled, and then I'm going to quit, consider this. What if we have been wrong about religion and baptism and God and sin all along? What if we missed the azaleas in Georgia? What if all this time trying to be good, so damn good, and not do wrong, we were doing wrong while trying to do good? And what if the way through sin is to understand that we are godly but not gods, headed in God's direction but not in order to dethrone God or become God, but to be God's child? In a white frilly dress if you want, or somebody who just jumped through a ton of mud puddles. What if we were wrong all along while thinking we were right? Before that chill comes, before you get to the 8th should or must, whether it's beating yourself up for your shoulds and musts or beating somebody else up for their shoulds or musts, before that chill comes, I say we sit in the glory of not knowing, the glory of not always having to be right, the glory beyond doing good and being good and doing good and being good and damning ourselves by being so damn good, and head for the glory for which we were intended from the start. It sure beats the harm innocence does. Amen.